Good evening and welcome to Bronx Talk. We're thrilled that the majority leader of the City Council is with us this evening. We have a lot to talk about with her, including the latest on the Metro North project that will add 4 stations and other development to the borough of the Bronx, as well as the City of Yes proposals, investments in Castle Hill, Classen Point, Harding Park, Parkchester, Unionport, Soundview, and Westchester Square neighborhoods. And we also will talk about other City Council issues. Please join me in welcoming the majority leader of the New York City Council, who is the council member from the 18th Council District in the Bronx, the Honorable Amanda Farias. Nice to have you with us.
Thanks for having me, Larry.
It's a pleasure to have you, and congratulations. I don't think I've seen you since that appointment, which was in January, the first Latina majority leader of the City Council. I thought it would be interesting because people hear that. It's a nice title, and it gives you certainly significant responsibility, et cetera. What do you do in that role? What effect do you have on the activities of in legislation, in the council, in the city, on your district? What has it been like, and what is it? Let the people know what you're doing.
Well, I think what's really great about the role is that every majority leader has taken it on differently. I think sometimes it's been more of a political forward-facing role on behalf of the Democrats that are the majority of the council, but also you can really mold it into what the leadership of the council really wants to see it do. The speaker, Adrian Adams, has really leaned into ensuring that the leadership team is deeply involved with members. And so I've kind of taken on the task of meeting with members, finding their legislative priorities, meeting with delegations, ensuring that we are doing the jobs we're supposed to do, whether that's during the budget season and allocating priorities and making sure we're looking at things more comprehensively, but also to ensure that we're hearing more bills, we have topics that are relevant to the issues that we have to solve in our communities, and so on. And then I think the other more formal part of it is I am the presiding officer of our stated meetings, so our monthly meetings that we have 2 times a month, once in July and August. I'm the presiding officer, and I run our Democratic Conference meetings. So those are really the main functionalities of it. And I'm really being allowed the flexibility to work with members hand in hand.
So I'm thinking 2 parts of it. Number one, we're both Bronx people. You grew up in the Bronx. Have you learned anything? Has the perspective of dealing with council members from Queens and Brooklyn, Staten Island, and Manhattan given you a broader look, or we're all having the same issues, and the legislation has to deal with it? What has that done?
Yeah, I think it's mostly the same, but just in maybe different dialects, right? I think just like the city.
It's all New York.
True. But I do think that it comes in different flavors, right? We have large communities, both in the Bronx, in Queens, in Brooklyn, that have households, homeowners, cooperatives, condominiums, where they have their own set of issues, for example. Or you have some communities like in Queens that have a huge influx that similarly match the South Bronx in a lot of shelters. So I think there are comprehensive issues that are happening across the board. What this has been giving me more perspective on is a way to coalesce people into larger issue bases and area topics that we should really be honing in on as a council to try to solve the issues of everyday New Yorkers.
And maybe more so now than ever, of course, we all know what's going on nationally, politically. In the Bronx, we have our first Republican elected official in 20 years. I guess and certainly where Christy Marmorato is where a lot of the discussion on development and and the City of Yes and zoning is. I guess it's been a bit of a challenge, or the beauty of it maybe is to put everybody together. You tell me what you think.
Yeah, I think especially as we were approaching the Metro North development, we were really looking at how do we work together? How do we make sure the communities that are interconnected, that do shop within one another, that are sending their kids to the schools or doing activities, are able to max benefit out of this project? And I think that's generally across the board how at least Councilmember Marmorato and I approach our joint community board and our precinct council. We make sure to stay in communication and kind of try to tackle the issues together to make sure we're going into the meetings with the same information.
In this very fraught political climate, that sounds about as healthy as it could be.
I try to keep a healthy relationship.
And I think the results are out there. I mean, after the Council Land Use Committee voted to approve the Metro North plan very recently, For people who don't know, the 4 stations are in Hunts Point, Parkchester, Van Ness, Morris Park, and Co-op City. You've enthusiastically supported what the results were. $200 million investments for your district, District 18. You did so much outreach. How were the original plans conformed to things that you would say, well, this is now acceptable to the Bronx
Yeah,
and to your district?
yeah, I think
Oh,
initially.
excuse me, and to all communities in the city. I forgot I'm talking to the majority.
Well, I appreciate that context. I think initially when we came into these plans, again, they were all developed prior to any of us coming into office. We came into them and there were already set limitations. One I can use as an example is there was a minimum height limit on the developments in my district at 27 stories. And so that already posed an issue for me where most of the development in the area is at 15 stories.
I was going to say, you said so easily 27 stories. It's twice as
Tall
large as my
buildings.
building, and I live on the top floor. So
Yeah, and I think in
that's large.
conversations with community members, folks were not willing to go with that much density and that much height, but where they could see benefit, they were willing to go a little bit higher. So for example, 2 of the buildings that we have in my district, one is at 21, one is at 23. It matches the community benefit people wanted to see, like capital investments, local infrastructure investments in the streets and street safety, MTA presence at a station. All the schools in the surrounding area are getting deep investments. We're getting a community center. We're getting open space, walkable pathways, things that people wanted to see if they were going to get any development. And again, the community board, CB9, voted for more density in higher buildings to get more benefit out of it and to get more units specifically, because we do have a lot of families that are doubled up and tripled up still post-pandemic.
As you know, I've sat in this seat for a very long time, and the Bronx gets a lot of promises. I mean, I still think about that water treatment plant, and they said, well, you're going to get $200 million of parks improvement, but then the task of following through, did the money ever get there? I'm sure now you and your colleagues will have your hands full to make sure. But, you know, reading about it, key achievements in affordability, in parking, and school investments, it sounds like, assuming those things are kept to by the council and the mayor, it seems like that's a good deal. Not to mention the advancement in transportation.
Sure. And I think one way that we're trying to do that and ensure that these benefits are actually followed through with is we've gotten a lot of the administration's commitments already put into the capital plan. So we have commitments of FY26, FY27, when things are actually going to start. So I'm still in office when they start and I can follow them. And we've also created a community advisory board, a task force that both the developers, myself, and the community have agreed upon with members that are going to follow through every single one of those commitments going forward with the administration and between the 2 developments that we have. So that way we have regular meetings, we have regular follow through, we can see what's going on as financing comes through, as HPD term sheets are looked at, things like that, to keep folks to task.
Where does the city of Yes fall in this? In other words, 2 separate things, but the climate now, and certainly the mayor's intention is let's build, build, build.
Sure.
In the Bronx 4 Community Board supported it, 3, 4, 7, and 9 voted yes, as you well know. 2, 5, 6, 8, 10, 11, and 12, you can keep track, you can jot them down, have all voted no. But what's your attitude to the way this City of Yes proposal has gone and might be going?
Yeah, I mean, I voted in favor for both carbon neutrality and zoning for economic opportunity. I think both of those were really straightforward in that they were amending our administrative code, our zoning code, to actually rectify some of the things that are already happening and maybe not happening at pace, or keeping the city's infrastructure where we actually need it to progress to. Zoning for housing opportunity, again, I am looking to my community boards. We know CB9 has already voted yes, CB10 has voted no, but still work has to happen on figuring out why there are no's, what are some of the concessions people are really flagging or need to be more aware of, so I can work through negotiating with the Department of City Planning to ensure that what we vote on as a council is reflective of what the city really wants to see.
You know, listening to you, I'm trying to draw a line between majority leader and council member
Sometimes
who
there's
represents
not a
the
line.
district. but you know, in a way, you get the advantage of being the majority leader, so you have some pull and you have access to people making decisions. And so, of course, your district, and I'm sure we don't say it out loud, but her district comes first. Um, uh, but so does the majority leader play in any of that, or it does? She's shaking her head.
I think for me, the way I view it is I am, yes, a council member first, and I represent a district and 7 neighborhoods where I have to hear the people that have put me into this position to bring their voices to the table. My goal, though, as majority leader, is to bring what I'm raising or my community's raising to me to other members to hear, is this similar what's happening in your neighborhood? Your neighborhoods look like mine. I went into these NYCHAs, or I went into this homeowner community, or this HOA brought this up. How is that reflective of your community? And hearing the challenges or actually the assurances that it's the same. And then my job is to bring that to our land use chair, Councilmember Salamanca, and to bring that to the speaker of the city council, and to raise that to Chair Garodnick when we're looking at these zoning codes. So it's comprehensive.
Among the largest questions, and as somebody who's lived in the Bronx for a long time, the notion of parking, that in many of these cases, I think the regulations, I think the number was literally 30% of parking needed to be created if you're building new housing, but that's allegedly being done away with through the city of Yes. The whole idea for people to be able to now legally rent basements and other spaces that they can rent, which has raised concern about, making sure that they're done legally and in compliance. And then, of course, you have a financial thing with people taking money from other people. It becomes a difficult thing. You can go through some of those, or I know that those are easy objections that are out there.
I think what we have to keep in mind is comparatively looking at the proposals that ZEO had initially and actually what the council negotiated. Our core responsibility is to hear from community members and then push back on the administration, on the agency, to say our communities do not want ADUs or basement apartments.
ADUs?
Sorry, they're
I should
one
know,
of the
but we want to
proposals.
let the people know as well.
No, it's okay. It's the proposals that have the additional units outside, or
I
like
see. Yes.
where people
Okay.
can make a rentable space.
Sure.
Ideally, I think what a lot of folks are thinking is your young person in your household is going to college. You're going to give them an opportunity to live independently, or your parent. You don't want to put them in a nursing home. You can put
So you
them
put
in the
them in-
unit outside.
So that's another way of doing it.
That's another way of doing it. But I think our main component now is making sure we're collecting all of that data and hearing from communities, because we have every right and our responsibility. It's our duty to make sure we go back to the agency with the modifications that we need to assure that if and when this passes, it's passing and people in communities are not going to be negatively impacted. They can benefit from it.
I think in theory, given all the development and everything, this is music to Bronx people's ears, because we've, of course, had so much inundation with stuff that we don't necessarily want. And let's be fair and clear, and probably you and your colleagues deserve some credit. New data shows that some Bronx neighborhoods are far outpacing others in terms of affordable housing construction, in the middle of where everybody's saying where's affordable housing. Well, come to the BX, right? That's what we've got. I want to talk about this. The Castle Hill bid has done very well, apparently. Why?
Yeah.
How come?
I think they have a really great group of committed stakeholders. They have great leadership that's committed to the overall goal of their bid creation. I mean, I came into office in 2022. Their bid was already waiting 5-6 years to be passed into the council. We passed it within my first 4 months. And they've really just been able to hit the ground running in ensuring that the committed stakeholders were putting money in the right places, showing people coming to their stores, keeping them in business throughout the entire pandemic and afterwards, are seeing the benefit there. And we have a really great executive director and leadership that is fully committed to running an effective bid that's supporting the local community.
You put out regular columns in the Bronx Times. I mean,
do.
you attend hearings. You've been, I think, about as responsive as anybody could ask for. I noted the one that referred to an impressive $26.3 million investment in the 18th City Council District. I'm sure you're dying to talk about it. You're thrilled about it. Oh, and by the way, they tell me this is the first time it's being seen on camera or anywhere. They haven't even put it out yet. This is the newsletter. Now, we all get newsletters from elected officials, but this is pretty cool because it shows you where the investments are and what type of investments. I would say which are your favorites, but it's all of them, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Just talk about highlights of what you brought and what it took to bring things like that to a Bronx community.
Yeah, I think what's really important about my job is making sure that people know what we're doing with their tax dollars and people are understanding what's happening around them. I think more times than not, we all drive around our neighborhoods or throughout the Bronx and we see a new building pop up out of nowhere. We're like, where did that come from? And so what this newsletter is doing, and we're still working on it to make sure we get the right information in there.
It's actually really beautifully done, by the way.
Thank you. We have a lot of pride in that. We're trying to show people that the idea of making investments in communities is actually about building the future in the Bronx. And what that means for District 18 is showcasing that we're investing in new development, transitional housing. We're investing deeply into our NYCHA campuses. We're showcasing how we're modernizing and maintaining our cooperatives and our Mitchells, really people on fixed incomes, folks that have bought their homes to create generational wealth. That's happening here. And how we're even expanding campuses. We have the Stevenson campus that has a huge areas of underutilized parking spots.
And a renovated library coming.
And a renovated library too, actually. We're getting Castle Hill and Westchester Square Library
that's wonderful.
is actually getting renovated as well. But really it's about how we're building the future for the families that are here, for the families that are coming, for the young people in our communities, and for those aging in place, that we really are building on their backs.
That's a very difficult balance for many communities because, and I've heard this goodness from borough presidents way back, talking about, well, we don't only want to have affordable housing because we'd like to bring young professionals, or if there are Bronx people like yourself, maybe like me or like others, who are growing up in the Bronx and they're professional people, we don't want them to say, I don't really want to live here. We'd like to stay in the Bronx and, of course, provide for the Bronx.
Yeah.
How do you balance that, or just make sure everybody gets covered?
I think my situation is unique in that my family is the perfect example of this. I moved out of my mom's house, several years ago, but my mom is a single mom with my two younger brothers. This is a family of three. She's a union medical healthcare worker. And she is raising a family of three with under $72,000 salary a year, where her daughter, who lives in the same neighborhood, came up in the same neighborhood, even before being an elected official, is making a six-figure salary, right? When I was doing my own independent consulting before getting into council, we're trying to
You embody exactly what I was just talking about.
Yes. So what I think a lot of us in the Bronx are trying to do, and what I'm particularly trying to be mindful of, is my family is the family that's trying to stay and build and maintain their livelihood in my community. And that has to be reflective of people that fit in my bracket. A bunch of my friends that are still here are in the same bracket as I am, but also considering the families that look like my mom and brothers, who still need to be able to have flexible income and expendable income to make investments in themselves.
To me, it's a very interesting dynamic, because then there, of course, are parents and grandparents who are getting older, and they may need care, or they simply may need to be living on a fixed income and have to figure out how to live in the Bronx. You're actually living it, so that, I guess, makes it easier for you. Talk about gardens and the importance of gardens and cultural institutions. And I know I could go in here and find the amounts of monies that was spent on, but you really made sure to invest in those things. And folks, the reason I bring it up is when I move around the Bronx, every neighborhood talks about these things. And here's just to show how maybe it can be done in this neighborhood or your neighborhood. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think when we look at our open green space and we look at the different types of campuses we have, a perfect example of this is our Castle Hill NYCHA campus. We have 2 garden spaces, both Carroll Gardens and a memorial garden we have right in front of Castle Hill houses. We're trying to get people with programming that we're funding, but also with investing in the green space, back out, really have intergenerational programs, intergenerational commitment into the community, and trying to find ways to incorporate our schools. Like, for example, when I put a hydroponic lab in a school, we connected to one of the local gardens. So both we're building some green infrastructure in a school, but also having kids touch soil.
That's twofold. Number one, is there has to be an outpost for it, and kids should see it in their neighborhoods. The second part is something I've talked about on this program a lot. Kids sat looking at screens for 2 years. And so
Sure.
if you were 8 years old, it was not until 10 that you got back in the classroom. If you were 12 years old, I mean, you can do the math. And if you were high school, I mean, it may have robbed you of some of those very important high school days. These kinds of activities, this is Gary's commentary. These kinds of activities for our kids right now are so important. And in the Bronx, where we have so much opportunity
Sure.
for all of these things, every neighborhood has places where you can investigate these things, which brings up something else I wanted to mention about the whole bid situation, which you didn't mention. The other reason that I think that the Castle Hill bid has worked out so well, it's a great neighborhood, folks.
It
You know
sure
what I
is.
mean? I mean, there's so much in there. Now there has been, we know, you said it took 5 years or 6 years to do this, so much disinvestment. So when they finally got the chance to say, here's our neighborhood, let's work together to build it up. And to me, this is Castle Hill it's a very typical, quote unquote, Bronx neighborhood, lower middle and middle class, with tremendous history, with like tremendous resources like the
Yeah.
YMCA and Boys and Girls Club and everything else that's there. And to me, that's a really big part of it. And if we can get all of our neighborhoods that have this stuff to grow like the Castle Hill bid, woohoo.
Yeah, there is definitely a level of commitment between our mixed economy, the commercial corridor, having accessible transit. There is a definite direct investment that you get to see from people into their community because of that. And you're right, it's a great neighborhood.
Before I want to do something fun, but before I do that, I want to have a difficult conversation. That's about this Charter Review Commission that
Sure.
Mayor Adams has been talking about. Many say it would sidestep the council advice and consent proposals. But what do you make of it, and where are we going with this? And then we're going to do something fun. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime a mayoral administration has called for a charter review commission, the intent is to make sure you're serving the public and you're trying to get the most public good out of what you want to propose into the next ballot cycle. And I think overall, we're looking at a charter review commission that was fast, quick, low attendance. It has now come out with questions just to push out a council's input that truly, I think the main component of this that I've been driving is we are the people every single day that we're elected by folks that have our ears and eyes to the ground. When I go to a community board meeting, when I go to a precinct council meeting, when I go to a civic meeting, I take back what they're hearing as agencies not picking up their phones, long wait times on solving an issue, a month going by without a 311 request getting closed. That means that the question we have posed for the council to have more input on advice and consent on these leaders and these agencies is a critical moment for the council.
Where are we at? Is the mayor going to get his way because politically he's maneuvered it right?
I think legally, this is the Charter Review Commission is the legal way to bump a council input question on the ballot. And so if he continues on with the post questions that he has put forward, the council's question will get bumped.
And then I'm sure there'll be pushback and court action, et cetera. Okay, as you know, I've hosted this program for 30 years,
Yes.
1,450 programs. You were on our show in February 2023 talking about the new majority of women in the city council. And as you know, because I've told you that out of all those programs, Councilmember Farias' response to my question in February of 2023 blew me away. The best answer I've ever heard. And it was tremendous. So I'm going to show you. We're going to play a minute, and then I'll ask a quick follow-up question. Let's take a look. You said that male-dominated council might not have understood this. It's is it kind of I don't know how to describe it. Is it because they just don't understand or it never occurred to them? I mean, I don't think that anybody would be mean about it, so to
Yeah.
speak, or
I mean,
prejudiced about it. It's
yeah.
kind of an organic thing, I suppose, is the way to describe
I
it.
think at this table you might be the best person to answer that, but generally, yeah,
I would have to
do.
be told about the seriousness
I
of it.
do
Yes,
think
maybe.
that
Very good.
you do policy, you focus priority, yes, on community issues, but typically from your lens, right? So it's not to say that there aren't
Somebody was
men.
being evil about it, I
Yeah,
guess,
that's
is what
not to
I'm
say
saying.
that men are not
All right.
focusing on
Thank
women
you.
and children, but it is to say that they're not experiencing it on the day to day, right? It's not happening to them wholly all the time. And so when you do have more women in office, you do see just a change a bit of, yes, we're talking about ensuring healthcare access, but we're also talking about what does birthing experience look like and why are doula services necessary? Or we have a year-long plus usually on gynecological services for women.
All right, there we go. Congratulations. She made the best of tapes. It'll go down in history. She got right back at me. So my follow-up question, we've got probably about a minute left. Has it turned out the majority of women now in the city council? Have you seen results that make you feel good that, wow, we're doing the right thing and we're building on the things that we talked about in that clip?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely is the
Absolutely,
answer.
we have. And I think more so now we've created a space where a lot of our male counterparts and colleagues are engaged in those dialogues as well and really trying to be supportive.
Oh, so the guys
So,
weren't evil. I was right.
no,
We were just very
we've brought them into the fold thanks to your question.
I guess so. We just have a few, maybe a couple of seconds left. What's next? Biggest thing you're going to work on next after you leave here? Because I know your schedule is busy. What's next?
Yeah, I think overall it's going to come into a really competitive November. I think outside of my
yes.
governmental hats, that's really what's next for all of us is ensuring that we're getting people out to vote, that we're keeping them engaged in the process, and we're making sure the facts are out there for why they have to participate.
And that the process goes effectively and well without problems.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Majority Leader Amanda Farias, thank you so much for
Thank you
joining
so
us
much,
on
Gary.
Bronx Talk. Next week, one of your colleagues, Councilmember Althea Stevens, will join us. We thank our producer, Rebecca Hemick, director Nick Marrero, editor Yenelsida Diaz, the cast of thousands who work with us here in the studio and up there in the control room. And of course to you too, the people of the Bronx. So if the curtain don't fall, the creek don't rise, we will see you next week. Good night.